Great kickoff last night, guys. I want to start with a video this morning to just talk about a particular covenant in the Bible that doesn't get a lot of attention in our experience. As a reminder, last night we launched the Genesis 3:15 promise, and that's where the red thread is. That's where God says there's going to be a seed that will come and crush the serpent. And so that seed works its way from Adam to all these men in the Bible and eventually to Jesus. And that's the red thread line. Next week, you're going to read about Abraham and the Abraham promise. And there we'll unpack the blue thread, the green thread, and the yellow thread. But I want to mention Noah's covenant, the covenant with Noah. It's not part of our threads, but it's very interesting. And remember, let's start back in Genesis 1. The first command that God gave to man was that they'd be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So God gave a woman to the man, a marriage institution. This is the way we'll produce. Go and fill the earth. After the flood, we start over. And we have Noah and his 3 sons and their wives. And God says again, go, be fruitful, multiply, and spread across the earth. Disperse. That was the command. And that's where the Noah covenant comes right after that. He says, oh, by the way, all the waters shall never come against the flood and never come to flood and destroy the earth again. Basically, I will not do what I did with Noah. What he's saying is, you can trust that you will not be washed away by another cataclysmic event. He wanted them to know that when it rains, don't be scared. Don't run off in fear for your lives. See my rainbow in the sky. You can trust me. That's my covenant. And I think that that had to be super special and important to instill some peace and stability in the days following the flood, because obviously it was such a traumatic event. So the point that I want to make with this is when we get to Nimrod, we have this leader who is basically, he's leading a rebellion against God. And here's what he says. He says, let's build a tower to the heavens and make a name for ourselves. But here's the big point of why. So that, he says in chapter 11, verse 4, so that we will not be dispersed across the earth. So he takes the one very command God says to be fruitful, multiply, spread across the earth. He says it to Adam and Eve. He says it to Noah and his sons. And now Nimrod comes along and says, let's go high, build a tower so that we will not spread out. We will stay here and build a little global tribe. When God looks down and says, look at what they're doing, we've got to stop them. He recognized their ability to, if they work together, nothing would be impossible. He created them with talents and abilities and gifts and skills so that they could reach a point that nothing would be impossible. So God confuses the language and spreads them out. And it says in chapter 11, it says that in doing so, he dispersed them across the earth. It's like, okay, if you won't follow me, I'll disperse you through my supernatural ways by changing languages and causing you to have to spread out. And the tower stopped. All right, so here's what I want to share, something interesting. I ran across this book. It's Josephus, Flavius Josephus. Many years ago, I ran across the book, and I've heard about Josephus. I've heard about he was the historian who was born 4 years after Jesus was crucified. So this is going back 2,000 years. And Josephus was a young boy and a young man on earth at the time when Peter and Paul were evangelizing the early church. So his works, although they're not biblical and they're not inspired, they're highly credible and collaborative in helping Bible students and Bible scholars piece things together. And so I read the first few pages. That's all I've read. But I started reading this 10, 12 years ago. And he was giving his Genesis account. He gives an account kind of like a Bible commentary. And so Josephus says this about Nimrod. He says that Nimrod convinced the people of his day that God had destroyed his ancestors, or their ancestors, in the flood. And that's true. God did destroy their ancestors. But Nimrod used that um, as ammunition to rebel against God and to say, you can't trust God. Who's to say that he won't send another flood? Remember, God said that he would not send a flood. He put a rainbow in the sky. He gave a promise. But Nimrod's saying, you can't trust God. Let's build a tower and go high. And the scriptures even say that the materials they used to build the tower was this bitumen. It's a par-titch type material. The same material that was used to waterproof Noah's Ark. Okay, so that's the Ark I didn't get to show you last night. But the same way they waterproofed the Ark, Nimrod is helping them waterproof a tower to the heavens, as Josephus says, so that they can protect themselves if God should choose to flood the earth and try to destroy them, which God said he wouldn't do. You see the point here. A rebellious leader leading we're trying to lead a global rebellion to shut down God's command, which was to spread across the earth. So anyway, this is a sign for us, kind of like as we're 315 men learning to know the big picture and understand the times, we want to start thinking and understanding what's going on today. What are trends we see today that we maybe learn about in our Bible reading? And so it's this theme of globalism that I really want to highlight, that even though globalism was ahead of its time back with Nimrod, and God said, no, not now, it's too early, I'm going to spread you out. Globalism is actually a part of the end times puzzle. In Daniel sees a vision, and he sees, and an angel helps explain to him about how there will be a scenario in the future where a global kingdom will come together so that a global leader can take charge. And so the global leader, as we learn later, is the Antichrist. But a global movement is part of what is going to be setting up. It's not even something we can avoid, and it's not even something we should try to stop. But it's something that, as Christian men reading the Word, we recognize it. We understand the times. So when we see COVID 2020, what happened? Well, a global health concern that created global stress, that created global solutions, governments coming together, the WHO organization, WHO, other global financial leaders coming together to meet once a year in Davos, Switzerland, to talk about global financial concerns, talk about global currency possibilities. You get the point. We're moving toward globalism. We're seeing our sports world completely come globalism, where even over in Dubai and Saudi Arabia and the Middle Eastern money pockets are paying for American sports. So everything's becoming globalized right before our eyes. It's happening. This isn't something to be afraid of or something that we fight to resist. We just say, we saw this before in Genesis chapter 11. God shut it down. It was too early. God was still working to get the red thread to work its way to Jesus Christ so that he could go on the cross, die, do that part of the plan. But globalism will come later. In fact, it's here now. So that's the big point, is for us to just know that the more we see globalism, the more we can expect global ideas that are what? They're historically against God's ideas. In 1 Corinthians, Paul says that the wisdom of the world is foolishness in God's sight. So one of the ways to know what does God think is to look at what the world thinks and flip it. And that's usually right. And with the globalistic movement, globalism, philosophy, ideology, it's going to be wrong. It's going to be contrary to God. And we can expect that. We can see that. We can read it taking shape in our Bible read. And we can see it in the times in which we're living. 3:15, know the big picture, understand the times. Have a good week reading. We'll see you next week.